In other news, the new teleporting app has become ubiquitous, with more and more people skipping distances to save time. However, there are strong policies introduced to ensure the safe use of this technology. A whopping $2,000 will be charged if you found teleporting to cross roads. I must say the day is not far when the travel range will be increased and in no time you will be traveling long distances within seconds. Nonetheless, now you please teleport only at home. This is Mrinal reporting live from Not So True News.
Hi guys, my name is Lalit Desai and I'm a compositor, and I'm going to show you how I pulled off this effect completely in Nuke. You must have seen other tutorials on YouTube about this same effect, but those are mostly in After Effects. But we are going to use Nuke right from the editing to the final look dev of this portal, and a bit of machine learning to aid in our compositing process. Let's dive deep into it. So first up is the filming process, which is the most crucial one because in this process, you are going to foresee what you're going to composite and only then start shooting. So what I initially thought was that I'll just lock the frame to a wide angle shot and then enter at point A and exit at point B in the same frame. But then later on, I felt like there's no challenge in this because doing everything in one frame is the most easiest compositing job that you can have. But the moment camera starts panning, that's where all the complexity kicks in because then there's tracking, there's clean plate, and there is a whole lot of things which is fun doing in compositing. In order to execute this, what I did was I had a DJI RS3 Mini and I mounted my camera onto that gimbal. And in the DJI RS3 Mini, you have a tracking option for which you need the DJI app. And in that app, what you can do is you can basically add points, tracking points like panning points, and you can basically repeat these camera movements again and again by pressing record button through the DJI app. So that is one caveat to this, that if you press record button on the camera or in the monitor and control app, that camera move won't happen. You have to click record button in the DJI app itself. So this is the most tricky part of the entire shot, which was filming it and acting. So what I initially decided was that I'll enter the frame, I'll open the portal app, I'll enter the portal, exit across the street, then again, enter from there and exit over here in the same position. To do this, what I did was on the DJI app, I locked the camera to this view for 30 seconds. I will do the action, I'll enter the portal here, and then I added an 8-second pan, which then pointed over there across the street. Lock the motion over there for like 60 seconds because then I had to like run from here, go there, do the action of exiting, and then enter again. And after that, pan back to the same position. This entire thing was one take. So the second shot was pretty easy because what I had to do was just come here and do the action of exiting the portal. Since my camera was locked to the same position, it was pretty easy. I just had to hit record again. So now since all the shooting and everything is done, we have a big long shot which was close to like almost 5,000 frames. Now we'll go to Nuke and make this into one single take and start our loop dev process of the portal. So now that we've shot the footage, it's time to check for any glitches or color space issues. I shot this entire footage in S-Log3 with S-Gamut 3.Cine in 10-bit 422. Just check if your camera supports 10-bit recording or not. The other thing is, Nuke is a linear compositing package. So you need to linearize all your footages before starting to composite. And DaVinci is one of the best software to linearize your footages. So what you can do is, after having your footages imported in the media pool, you can go to your project settings and in the color management, just switch on to ACCT, input transform to S-Log3 S-Gamut.Cine and no input transform. In the camera raw, you can go to Sony RAW and this will display it linearly. Once you save it, you have a linear display of your footage. So once you linearize all your footages from DaVinci, you can import them into Nuke, set the input color space transform to ACES 2065-1 and view it from the Rec 709 ACES color space. This will exactly match to the Rec 709 color space inside your camera when you switch on the Gamma Assist function. So now that you have linearized all your footages and your color spaces and everything look correct in the Nuke workspace, it's time to start editing. So basically, one of the most important tool over here is the morph dissolve node. It basically blends frames without any glitches. I had a lot of repeated frames over here. In order to blend them, dissolve them properly, I used the morph dissolve node. If you see this footage, the first one, I enter and then the camera starts panning. Now, if you see from here till I arrive across the street, the camera is absolutely still, and I had to do that because I knew that later on I had to blend these frames and cut out this entire empty section through morph dissolve node. So now I chose frames where I thought, okay, this is where I'm entering. I will be choosing these frames and cut directly where my pan stops. Now the same thing, I keep this entire area because I'm acting. Now I enter the portal again, and here is where I cut, I exit, and this is where my pan starts. So I had to go from here to here seamlessly, and this is where morph dissolve does its magic, and then again back to here. Now this is where my first cut had ended. Now comes my second footage. Now I had to blend between the end of the first footage and the beginning of my second footage, again through morph dissolve. And finally I had one final edit which was close to 800 frames, which had all my two footages, all my ins and outs correctly morphed and dissolved with one final seamless transition. In this entire single take, I had to show the portal 3 times. So basically, one when I enter, the second when I exit and then re-enter, and then when I exit finally in the balcony. So I had my entire comp broken down into 3 shots. So I had exported all of the shots according to whatever frame range I needed. So I saw a lot of tutorials on internet and on Foundry's website about copycat node and how to use it. So basically you need to give the node a lot of data so that it can learn from it and give you a decent output. However, the output that you get, the roto that you get, is not really articulate roto, and in my case I didn't need one. However, it did not give me a really good output on the hair, and I used a different trick which we generally use in compositing to get hair details, which I'm going to explain later. Now comes the fun part, the actual look dev of the portal. What I did was, basically I took a cube and I had a camera and I had a light over here. I tried to match the lighting to my shot. You might say fortunately or unfortunately, I shot this on a very sunny day, and if you see in my main footage, there is a lot of harsh lighting which I had to later on replicate. If this was a cloudy day, it would have been even harder for me to match it to the real world lighting. But since it was a sunny day, I could use harsh lighting on the portal itself to match the shadows, to match the reflections as well over here in the opposite directions. I did like a basic scratch pass. I used a grunge texture from Google. I did a basic animation of it opening and closing on the cube itself. Over here now, if you see, yeah, this is how it opens and closes. This was a base pass with just a basic material wired to a wireframe and rendered through a scanline render. And now I have a very basic blue color pass. I multiplied the texture over here. A reflection pass. This was a 2D cheat actually. Nuke scanline render is not really capable of doing reflections like object reflections. It can definitely do environment reflections through the reflection and re-render node. The self shadow. For self shadowing, it's the same thing, attaching basic materials to the geo. And I added this kind of an obstruction, a gobo kind of a thing, which created this harsh light. Then I added an environment shadow using the same thing. This wall is that I'm using it to replicate my real world scenario. And then there was over here, this was the reflection shadow actually. This is my base color. These are my shadows. I multiplied the self shadow on my base pass directly. So this is what my portal looked like basically. I had some basic lighting matched. In order to get some hair details back, I used a very common technique in VFX wherein you divide by a clean plate and then multiply those details onto your object. Then finally I have a noise, a border noise that was going through the portal, and then I had myself revealed with the help of the roto. Now this entire thing creates a lot of black edges. I used an edge push to get rid of them. When I enter, I had to create an outline over myself just to show that I'm entering the portal, and I had to like see which part of my body enters first, and accordingly adjust the depth of my rotos. And then edge from alpha, again masked it using the same rotos. Yeah, so these are the rotos. Added some distortion using noise, and then brighten them, so it felt like I was interacting with the portal. And finally a bit of glow, a bit of light wrap around me. So this was my first shot. This is how I did it. The other two shots were of the similar process, compositing process. And after having exported these into the same color space that I got them into, then I merged them together and I had my final shot. So guys, this was the entire video on the portal effect. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, please mention them in the comments. I can try to answer them as much as I can. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and do subscribe to my channel for more videos on compositing and Nuke. Until next time, thank you so much.